What's up YouTube, I'm Max, and this is my affirmation video from a book I've been copying in my affirmation journal called From Poverty to Power by James Allen. And I'm Max, and this is my affirmation video, and I'm trying to read it to you, and you can just sit and listen. This is the secret of abounding happiness. Great is a thirst for happiness, and equally great is for the lack of happiness. The majority of poor long for riches, believing that the possession would bring them supreme and lasting happiness. Many who are rich have gratified every desire and whim and suffer from this misunderstanding and further possession of happiness, even though they are very poor. If you reflect upon the state of things, you will ultimately lead to this knowledge that is all-important truth of the advancing of happiness that is not derived from the outward possessions, nor misery of lack of them. For it is wise there we should find that the poor are always miserable and the rich always happy. Whereas the reverse is frequently the case, some of the most wretched people whom I have known were those who were surrounded with riches and luxury, while some of the brightest and happiest people I have met had possessed only the barest necessities of life. Many people who have accumulated riches have confessed that the selfish gratification that had followed in the acquisition of riches has robbed life of such sweetness, and that may be near a happy as which then they were poor. And when there is such happiness, and how is it to be secured? It is a figment of delusion and is suffering alone, and we shall find after this earnest observation and reflection that all except those who have entered the way of wisdom believe that happiness is only to be attained by the gratification of desire. It is this belief that is rooted in the soil of ignorance and continually watered by selfish cravings that is the cause of all misery and worldly misunderstandings. And I do not limit the word desire to the grosser animal cravings, and it extends to a higher psychic realm of more powerful and subtle and insidious cravings and such intellectually refined, depriving them of all that is beautiful and harmonious and purity of the soul. And those that are expressing that its expression is of happiness. People will admit that the selfishness is the cause of the unhappiness in the world, but they fall under the soil of destroying delusion that is somebody else's selfishness that is not their own. And when you are willing to admit that all your unhappiness is a result of your unselfishness, then to be far from the gates of paradise. But as long as you are continuing in the selfishness of others that are robbing you of your joy, so long will you remain a prisoner of your self-created purgatory. Happiness is that inward state of perfect satisfaction, satisfying, which is joy and peace, and from which all desire is eliminated. The satisfaction that results from gratified desire is brief and illusionary, and always followed by increased demand for the gratification. Desire is so as is traceable to the ocean, and it clambers louder and louder as the demands are offered and the devotees, until at last they are struck down by with physical and mental anguish, and they are hurled into the purifying fires of suffering. Desire is the region of hell, and all that torments are centered there. The giving up of desire is the realization of the heavens and all the delights that wait the pilgrim there. I sent my soul through the invisible sponge letter of that afterlife to spell, and by day, and my soul returned to me and whispered, I myself and heaven and hell. Heaven and hell and our inward states sink into self and in such gratifications, and you'll sink into hell, rise above self, into that state of consciousness that is by utter denial of self-forgetfulness, and you will then enter into heaven. Self is blind without judgment, not possessed of true knowledge, and always leads to suffering. Correct perception, unbiased judgment, and true knowledge belong only to the divine state, and only insofar as to realize the divine consciousness can you know that the real happiness is. So long as you persist in selfishly seeking your own personal happiness, so long will your happiness elude you, and you'll be sowing the seeds of wretchedness. Insofar as you succeed in losing yourself in the service of others, that measure of happiness will come to you, and you'll be reaping a harvest of bliss. It is in loving, not in being loved, the heart is blessed. It is gain-giving, not in seeking gifts, we find our quest. Whatever be the longing or the need, shall the soul be fed, and we indeed shall truly live. Cling to self, and you cling to sorrow. Relinquish self, and you'll enter into peace. To seek selfishness is not only to lose happiness, but even at to which to believe the source of happiness. See how Glutens are continued looking about for new delicacy, whereas to stimulate their dead-end appetites, and how bloated and burdened and diseased and scarcely any food at last is eaten with pleasure. Whereas those who have mastered their appetites and not only do not seek but never of this gustatory pleasure, I would say, and to find in delight the most frugal meal, the angel form of happiness, which we are looking through the eyes of self. Imagine we see ungratified desire. When clasped, it is always found to be the skeleton of misery. Truly, that there who seek life, thou shalt lose it, and that they lose their life, and they shall find it. Abiding happiness will come to you when you're ceasing to be selfishly clinging and willing to give up. When you are willing to lose unreservedly that impermanent thing which is so dear to you and which will cling to you, you will cling to it and one day will be snatched from you, then you will find that which seemed to be like a painful loss turns out to be a supreme gain. To give up in order to gain, there is no greater delusion than this, nor no more prolific source of misery, but to be willing to yield up and to suffer the loss is indeed the way of life. How is it possible to find real happiness? By centering ourselves in that which is permanent. Rise therefore above the clinging into which the craving for the impermanent things endue, and enter into a consciousness of the internal, and as rising above the self, and by growing more and more into the spirit of purity, self-sacrificing, universal love, you become self-centered. You become not self-centered, but you become centered in that consciousness, and you will realize that happiness, which has been no reaction, and which will never be taken from you. From the heart that is reached in this self-forgetfulness and love for others, is not only become possessed of the highest in happiness, but you have entered into this immortality for which is realized to the divine. And look back upon your life, and you will find that the moment of your most supreme happiness is where that in which you had uttered some word of or performed of an act or compassion or self-denying love. Spiritually, happiness and harmony are synonymous, and harmony is one of the phases of the great law, whose spiritual expression is love. All selfishness is discord, and to be selfish is to be out of harmony with the divine order. As we realize that all embracing love, which is a negation of self, we put ourselves in harmony with the divine music, the universal song, and that beautiful melody, which is of true happiness and becomes our own. Men and women are rushing and running around like crazy blind people for such happiness, and they cannot find it. Never until then, until you will realize and recognize that happiness is already within them and around them and filling the universe, and that they in themselves and searching are shutting themselves out from it. I felt happiness to make her mine, past towering oak and swinging ivy vine. She fled, I chased her, O slanting hill dale, O fields and meadows in the purple hail. Pursuing rapidly or dashing the stream, I scaled the dizzy cliffs where the eagles scream. I traversed swiftly the land and sea, but always happiness eluded me. Exhausted, fainted, I pursued no more, but sank to rest upon a barren shore. One came and asked for food. I placed a bread in the gold hands of the palms. One came for sympathy, and the other came for rest. I showered with every need of my very best. One low sweet happiness, with a form of divine, stood by whispering softly, I am thine. I'm Max. These beautiful lines of which I just expressed to you are the secret of all abounding happiness. Sacrificing the personal and the transient, and you'll rise out and once into the impersonal and permanent. Give up the narrow, cramped self that seeks to render all such things to its own petty interests, and you will enter into a company of the angels, which is that of the heart and the essence of universal love. Forget yourself in the entire of the sorrows and of others, and this minister of others, and divine happiness will come from all sorrow and suffering by taking the first step with a good thought, and the second with a good word, and the third with a good deed. You have entered into paradise, and you also may enter into paradise by pursuing the same course. It is not beyond, it is here, it is realized only by the unselfish, it is known in its fullness, only to be pure in heart. If you have not realized this unbounded happiness, you may begin to actualize it by holding before you the lofty ideal of unselfish love and aspiring towards it. Aspiration, where prayer is desire turned upward, it is the soul turning towards its divine source, where alone permanent satisfaction can be found. By aspiration, the destruction forces of desire are transmuted into divine and all-preserving energy. To aspire is to make an effort to shake off the fiery winds of desire in this new sun of that was made wise by loneliness and suffering, returning to his fatherly's mansion. As you rise above sword self, as you break one after another, the change of that mind, you will realize that the joy is just giving, as distinguished from the misery of grasping and giving out your substance, giving of your intellect, giving of your love and light that is growing within. You will then understand that it is indeed more blessed to give than to receive. But the giving must be of the heart and without any taint to self, without desire or reward. The gift of pure love is always attended with bliss. If after you have given you are wounded because you are not thankful or flattered by the name put on the paper, know then that your gift was prompted by vanity and not by love, and you are merely giving in order to get, and you are not really giving but grasping. Love yourself and the welfare of others, and forget yourself. In all that you do, this is the secret of abounding happiness. Ever be on the watch to the guard against selfishness, and learn to faithfully with divine lessons of inward sacrifice, so you shall climb the highest heights of happiness, and you shall remain in the never-clouded sunshine of universal joy, clothed in the shining garment of immortality. I'm Max. That was a section from Poverty to Power by James Allen, my affirmation video. I just copied the book here and just read it. I'm Max, and I'm out.